I think I'm live. Hey everyone, I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I did. I got to spend some quality time with a new friend, and I got to do a lot of reading and researching for upcoming series and making partnerships with various organizations in San Diego, and it has been absolutely amazing. I thought that I would give you a preview of what's coming up this week at Lace on Brace. But first, a few housekeeping issues that I want to make sure that we just get out of the way. There are quite a few posts that we posted up this week. Most were about money, which most of you guys run right past, and I'm going to ask that you not. There are posts by Meleza, posts by Julie, posts by me, and they are all important. It's important to be able to have this conversation. We're one of the few who do. And as much as people go, why is she still talking about this? It's because it's important, and not just for the kitchen of Lace on Race. It's important for every other space as well. To talk about money when it comes to content creation by Black women is important. If you're not doing it here, you're not doing it in other spaces. If you don't understand the principle of paying creators and thinkers and intellectuals and teachers and educators, then you're not doing it in other places. It's also important for another reason. I realize that a lot of you are 1 foot out of the car after the whole Holly Michigas. You're still here, but the seatbelt is unbuckled and you're trying to figure out if you should stay. I invite you to go back to look at the Vox magazine article. I see that there are people on leadership team who are currently watching this. People on leadership team, could you find the Vox article, please, and link it below? One of the things that I said in that Vox article that's going on a year old now, but is still every bit as relevant as when we did it in late June of 2020, is that one of the sirens of racial justice work is that people do it in half measures. That's not going to work. 1 foot out of the car, seatbelt unbuckled, waiting for the first excuse to bail. And usually it's because of money. Does not help your praxis. Doesn't get you any closer at all to the North Star. Currently, we are at about half of our basic goal of 9,000. Thank you for those of you who are sustainers and sustainers in training who have been very faithful. I thank you for those of you paying a la carte who have also financially engaged. That's great too, but let's face it, we are still dealing with the residue and the ramifications of what Holly perpetuated. Out of service to the North Star, completely out of alignment with our North Star and with our Western Star. Our asking and talking about money is another way of talking about power, is another way of talking about how one, for lack of a better word, prosecutes their racial justice walk. We've done a lot of good work here in the last couple years, and I think that one of the most surprising and disheartening parts of these last few weeks is that so little of it seems to have landed with so much of you. It's easy when it's easy. And if you want this space to stick around, and considering we haven't lost very many eyeballs, there is a preponderance of you who do. It does take financial engagement to make that happen. It takes financial engagement to do first fruits with our community partners. We believe in Bertie Gutierrez so much that we made her our community partner twice for the month of March. For April, we have an Asian Pacific group here in San Diego that does amazing work. I am excited to talk to the executive director tomorrow and flesh out some things. She's going to hopefully give us a blurb about the work that they're doing, but I can tell you a little bit. They currently work with the district attorney's office, with the sheriff, and with the police to make sure that they are as sensitive as they can be in stopping Asian hate in San Diego County and beyond. They hit on policy, they hit on legislation, and they do a food drive every week in Paradise Hills because that's how you do it. That's how you do it. You got the policy, you've got the high-minded stuff over here, and you've got boots on the ground, looking people eye to eye and serving with Hesed. And we want to partner with that. We're gonna. There's another group with an amazing woman who works with Black students with autism. And we are going to be partnering with her during April, which is Autism Awareness Month. As someone who is neurodiverse, you know that my heart is right there. As someone who not only is neurodiverse, but my very first population when I got into social services work, more than 30 years ago, was nonverbal people with autism. You know that this is where my heart is. Autism presents differently in different populations, and it shows up differently in Black populations. And I'm going to finesse that a little bit. It doesn't necessarily show up differently. It is interpreted differently. It is received differently. And we see that in schools where someone who might get an autism diagnosis that not necessarily explains away certain behaviors or quirks or learning challenges, but is allowed to be accommodated. We get different diagnoses. We get oppositional defiant disorder. We get antisocial disorder. We get suspended. We get placed in special ed, but not the kind of special ed that really helps and suckers. We get in special ed programs that basically warehouse. That's true. This woman is fighting that. And we're going to partner with her with First Fruits, regardless of how the community does or does not stand with Lace on Race. We talked about that in leadership. We talked about it in our all hands meeting, which was the first time all of us had gotten together in a Zoom call since the Holly Michigas. The last time we got together was when we convened as our very first board and elected officers. That was on January 31st. A day burned into my brain. They're coming up on their next board meeting. I am excited about it and a little scared because they're also going to form a hiring committee. They're so pretty. Yeah, I have to do that. It's part of my contract now to make sure that I get the interview so that I will no longer be interim executive director, but full on executive director. And then maybe I can afford a jacket. I'm funny. But I do think that it's important that we know. We have talked about it. We have talked and talked and talked. And it is crucial that we live out our praxis, regardless of what the greater community does. We hope that the community walks with us. But even if they don't, our promises stay extant. Let's talk about promises. Let's talk about expectations. And let's talk about what we have a right to expect of each other and what other people have a right to expect from us. You all have an absolute right when you're here to expect my very best. And you get it. But let's talk about concomitant responsibilities, which is a lot of a topic. It's a big topic, and a lot of people want to just slide right by it. But we're going to talk about it because we talk about the hard things here at Lace on Race. The community has responsibilities too. You have responsibility for your own growth, your own education, your own internalization of concepts. You have a responsibility to the community as well, the community of walkers that you have decided to walk with. And when you're here, your family. I know so many of you think that you're just lurking. You can just scroll and roll. And I'm not just talking about people who are here in the formal Lace on Race space. I'm also talking to my friends and followers on my personal page who don't come here but want the benefits. That's not how it works. Here is what makes us distinctive. Um, Earlier today, I was at a meeting where we were talking about distinctives in our organization. What makes us different from every other organization out there? We were talking about opening up our San Diego, our La Mesa facility, um, in the wake of lessened COVID restrictions in California in general and in San Diego County in particular. And one of the things we were talking about is what makes us different than other spaces that we cannot back away from, that it is absolutely crucial that we hold on to. Well, we can talk about that in this space as well. There are some things that make us different than other spaces. Some would say to our peril, but I would disagree. Here are the things, some of the things that makes us different. We want all of you. We don't just want one line scroll and rolls. We don't want you to chuckle a little bit and forget that you ever came. We want real, authentic engagement. We don't want just your eyeballs. We don't want to see our numbers go up and up. I realize that that's supposed to be one of the goals of a page, of a Facebook page or a Facebook group. We've never gone for that, and we're not going to. I am aware of the numbers and how they dip and fall. Facebook makes sure I see it every time I sign into the Messenger page manager app. The first thing I see is how many people we've got, how many new people, um, how many, they don't tell us specific names, but how many people left, how many people joined, all of that fun stuff. So we know, but you know what? I'm not driven by it. It doesn't matter to me if we have 7,700 unique faces on the Facebook page if I'm not seeing 77,500 of you. Do I have you if I don't see you? Do I have you if I cannot relate to you eye to eye? Or are you just in that coliseum watching me hopefully not get gored by a bull, but just in case you're there for it? It reminds me of something that I used to do when, oh my gosh, 25 years ago when I was in my early 30s. On Sundays, I would go to church and then I would rush back. I mean, sometimes I would boogity, boogity, boogity out of there in the middle of a bite of potluck casserole so that I could run back home. I lived about a half a block away from my fellowship. And I would sit there and I would make some microwave popcorn and I would sit there and I would watch NASCAR. It was my dirty little secret. Me watching NASCAR, watching those cars go round and around and around. And sometimes something would happen. Now, I did not watch NASCAR for the cars going round and round and round. That's when I got up and made popcorn. What really got me were two things. One, I have no problem telling you, the pit stops. The pit stops are amazing. The pit crew comes in and they swarm on that car and they change out the tire and they add fuel and they add oil and they make sure it's in alignment. And then everyone goes, they push, 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 push. And the car goes out again to do it over and over. See, that I don't mind telling you about. It is amazing. And there's a lot, and if you allow it to, you can see a lot of analogies here. The pit crew coming in and making sure that Lace on Race has its tires filled and that there's fuel in the tank and that we're in alignment. Are you with me? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Because I think it's pretty good. Make sure the car is in alignment and then go, go, go for another and another and another and another and another. But there is something else that is a little less savory that people who watch NASCAR do that I was so not necessarily ashamed, but it did. It caught my attention. You'd be glued. It's when one of the cars crashed. It's when one of the cars crashed into the wall or into another car. Here's what made me stop watching NASCAR. Dale Earnhardt. Um, I am not sure it was either Daytona or Talladega, maybe another one. But Dale Earnhardt, not Dale Earnhardt Jr., his son who is currently on the circuit, but Dale Earnhardt himself crashed and did not survive. And it was fiery. And after everything was cleaned up, the cars kept circling round and round and round, and there were pit stops, and the pit crews, in a very subdued kind of way, made sure. I think they ran under the yellow flag for the rest of the race, but the race did go on. But what we saw was very little of the race. What we saw that day was replay after replay after replay of the crash. NASCAR learned a few things from that crash. Some of it stuck, some of it didn't. And it's worth having that conversation about when crises happen. What's learned from it, and that has legs and staying power so that you can learn from it going forward, but also what doesn't land. After NASCAR gave the obligatory tribute to Dale Earnhardt and released its statement, that circuit went on. It didn't stop. It's not as though NASCAR said, oh, well, we are going to completely rethink what we do and how we do it. And maybe we shouldn't have 80 cars going round and around and around a track, trying to pass each other, trying to get into that outside corner so they can do that. Maybe that's not the best way to do things. NASCAR still exists in more or less the same fashion. So it could be said that NASCAR learned little. NASCAR is a little bit safer than it used to be. There are some protocols. I'm going to pivot to NASCAR and race. One of the reasons that I kept NASCAR one of the dirty little secrets is because NASCAR has been a very white sport, and at least in the stands, if not on the track, a very racist sport. It's only been within the last 5 or 6 years that NASCAR has had people of color, Black people, because it's a Southern sport for the most part, and I'm a Southern girl. Most of the time, it's been white people, and Black people have talked about getting on the circuit, and there are tiers of trying to get into the highest tier circuits and having a harder time finding sponsorships. You know, when you see um, NASCAR drivers and they have stickers and decals and patches for everyone that sponsors them. I don't know how effective that is. I mean, just because I see Pennzoil on someone's shirt, is it going to make me make sure that I get Pennzoil when I go and get my oil changed on the Santa Fe? I don't know, but they do it. That's how they do it. That's how they get their sponsorships. That's how they make their money and allow a pit crew to exist, and allow the driver to exist, and allow the car to go round and round and round and round on the tracks. It's not a great system. It's not a perfect system, but it's the system that they have. Let's talk about the system that we have and how this is so complementary, so analogous to what we're talking about here. Lace on race, going round and round and round and round on a track, doing it slightly different set of spark plugs than you're going to find other places. And I want you to think about me as a NASCAR driver with patches. I'm still going to go round and round and round. I'm going to do my best not to hit other cars, because see, here, when we're talking about the racial justice arena, some might cynically call it the racial justice industry, there are a lot of cars on that track. I'm going to do my best not to bump on any of them. I think we can do really good work here without ever crashing into, intentionally or unintentionally, into another car to try to make them hit the wall. Do you see where I'm going with this? We do not have to play by that rule, and we do not have to pander to the fans in the stands who are hoping, in one way or another, for a fiery crash. No. Fiery crashes have nothing to do with North Star values. The name of the game is the pit stop, where we stop and where the crew comes and just swarms Lace on race changing the tires, changing the oil, and then they put it up, and then what the most exciting point is that they and the car goes up a little bit, and then they're ready, and it drops down. Yeah, that I when I think of that, I think, what kind of brassiere would I be wearing if I were a NASCAR driver? Because that is a sharp jolt. Boom, right? So it's like, you want to make sure you get one with underwire and lots of padding. Here's the thing. I'm the driver, yeah. But it is a rare thing when the driver is the only owner of the car, is the only sponsor of the car. No. When you look at it, it's kind of like horse racing in this sense. So you've got the jockey, and very rarely does the jockey own the horse. Here at Lace on Race, I own the most responsibility for this space. Stands or falls on this mug. But the good that comes from Lace on Race is not me alone. Oh, heck no. It's my staff. It's my leadership team. It's these women that I have seen showing up and suiting up and standing up and serving up. And you know who you are. The ones who are applying for Chef's Table, who I'm going to have interviews with, and I cannot wait. I cannot wait. Those are the pit crew that keeps it going. We do not have to crash and burn on anybody. And we will never, ever, ever root for someone. Oh my God, it's hard for me to even say the words. We will never root for someone to turn into a fiery ball and immolate. There are some groups who hoped that for Lace on Race, some individuals and groups. And a lot of people have asked me, they'll get theirs. I hope not. Oh my gosh. Why would you think that I would want that? Why would you think that I would be happy if something like that happened? I would not be happy if something like that happened. Oh no. There's room for all of us to go round and round and round. See, in the NASCAR that I envision in my head, if someone wants to pass me, I move over so they can pass me. This isn't a competition. Lace on Race does not exist at others' expense. No. How is that North Star value? And that includes the people and groups and individuals who wanted me to crash and burn and die in a fiery ball like Dale Earnhardt. Because there were some. Some of them are watching right now. Oh no. It is part of my praxis, not just as the leader and executive director of the Lace on Race Center for Racial Equity, to want you to do well and to not do anything that would either in spirit or to letter want bad things for you, for your individuals or for your groups. I will never, ever dance when someone is harmed. Even people who harm me, or who watch while I'm harmed, or who hold the coats while I'm harmed, or who write the press releases for the people who would harm. That's never going to be me. That is not the track that I roll on and that we roll on. We are new people. We are new people doing new things in new ways. And that means that I had to get off the track at Talladega and move to El Cajon Speedway here in San Diego County. We have a track. It's smaller. The people who are on that track, you're never going to see on ESPN or CBS or I don't know any other sports channels anymore, but you're not going to see them. They're the ones that have 2-person pit crews, not 50-person pit crews. They're the ones where, they've got exactly one sponsor on their chest if they have that. They're the ones whose wives make the sandwiches for the pit crew. Are you following me? And there are never 100 cars going round and round. Maybe there's 10 or 15. And after the race, everybody knows each other and they compete. They do, but they know each other. No one is putting salt into a gas tank. No one is trying to elbow cars so that they hit the wall so that you can go past them. That's not how they roll. And that's not how we roll. So I like the analogy of being a NASCAR driver. I get to wear a really cool jumpsuit and a helmet. It's great. I love the image when I close my eyes. But we will not be like anybody else, which means you in the stands cannot be like anybody else. You cannot be like this crowds at Daytona or Talladega that get a thrill when there's a crash. You need to be invested in the pit crew. You need to work to become a member of the pit crew. Are you getting what I'm trying to say to you? Supporting Race on Race in tangible ways is indeed being part of the pit crew. It allows us to do amazing things, not just our community partners, but also being able to say a full-throated yes when people ask me to speak or consult. And the ones that need us the most can't pay us. So if I'm going to spend 20 hours getting ready for a presentation and then giving the presentation, it's you who allows me to do that. You in the pit crew who allow me to do that. I'm going to be speaking to our printer this week. I'm excited. That's what this is allowed to do. We're going to be talking about curriculum and resource development with Dignified Learning Project. Charlene, that's what this allows us to do. This is hard to say too. That day when Dale Earnhardt passed, the drivers were shaken. Some of them were in tears, some of them were stoic, but there were a few, whether or not they were actually driving round and round the track that day, who were a little less than gracious. Dale Earnhardt was the undisputed number one for years and years on the NASCAR circuit, and now he's dead. And so, rather than grieve, they started jockeying for position. We're not them. We're not them. We'll never be them. Believe me when I tell you that I want every other racial justice space to not just have bigger numbers than we have, because pretty much every other racial justice space has bigger numbers than we have. That's obvious. I want them to have the influence that we have. I want them to have the staying power that we have. I want them to do work that attracts a major donor like we were fortunate enough to have. I want it all for them. I don't want to dance on anybody's grave, metaphorical or actual. I want to dance at their celebrations, at their weddings. I want to go, yay! There is room on multiple tracks for all of us. Everyone is saying something slightly different in slightly different ways. But as long as the North Star, lessening and mitigating the harm endured by Black and brown people, perpetuated by white people and white supremacy, as long as the North Star is being served, oh yeah, I dance a jig of happiness. I do the electric slide with joy. I do the Macarena with solidarity. That the racial justice space does not have that level of solidarity for every single one of its members is absolutely part and parcel white supremacy. I want to make sure. I want to make sure we hear that. Absolutely, it's white supremacy. This idea of scarcity, that if one person does well, that means no one else can. And if someone is here, then we need to make sure that we take that person down. That's white supremacy. It doesn't matter who's actually pulling the trigger on the gun, Holly. It's white supremacy. It doesn't matter who's holding the coats. It doesn't matter who's writing the statement. It's white supremacy. And that is what I get up every single day to fight with Hesed and with relentless reliability. Just as there were some people who left the NASCAR circuit going round and round and round and went towards other kinds of racing or left the racing game altogether. That's sort of what I did 3.5 years ago when I founded Lace on Race. We had something different to say. And we were and are convinced that we can go round and round and round and not scratch or dent. But instead, I mean, can you imagine? I want you to think about this for a minute. Here you are, there's like cars going round and round and round, and you're driving, right? With your helmet, you're driving, and it's like you go, hey, take a pit stop. Your back left tire is flat. And then you slide up to someone, and instead of trying to pass them, you hand them a sports drink. You take care of each other. Because everybody should get to the finish line together. And the people in the stands cheer when they're loving on each other every bit as much as when there's a fiery crash. They cheer at the pit stops. They do the wave when there's a pit stop. They go, when someone else passes, and it's a clean pass, not a dirty one, because there are dirty passes and clean passes, right? If Hesed were on the racetrack, we're not backing down off of that, no matter what happens to us. So let's talk about housekeeping now, because a big part of learning how to be in the pit crew is learning how to properly service the car. I actually dated someone who was in a pit crew once. Believe you me, I was excited. But they all have specialized jobs. Some of them, the only thing they do is they take off the left back tire. And then there's another person whose only task is to put on the left back tire. There's someone else who's holding the hose while someone else is putting the hose into the tank. There's another person who all they have is a flag, so they wave when it's safe for the car to go. All of us have roles to play in racial justice, but you've got to learn them. And if you're going to be in the pit crew, you need to learn every position. Because just because someone drops out of the car still needs to be serviced. So those of you in the stands need to learn how to be pit crew. Those of you who are used to only doing one thing and hoping that you don't need to, because if the back left tire is fine, there's nothing for you to do. You're just standing there. Well, you need to learn other tasks so that you're not just standing there. So if someone falls ill on the right front tire, you can get in there. Your lug nuts. That is how we do it. That's how we need to learn to do it. And the way we do it here, the way you learn how to be a good pit crew member, is guidelines and pin posts. We're going to be doing them again. We are going to be doing blasts from the past from other posts. Melissa pulled 4 that she curated for me, and I'm going to be putting commentary on top of them, and we're going to be running them this week. And each of you need to confront the ask. Each and every one of you, whether or not your answer is no. Part of your praxis in being in Lace on Race is doing the work, and that includes confronting white supremacy as an economic construct, and that includes looking me in the eye and saying yes or no. And out of 7,700 of you in this unique space on Facebook, 7,500 of you don't. 75 of you never look me in the eye. But you still show up in the stands. So I'm going to ask that you not do that. We're going to be doing, I have spent this weekend mapping out, at least in part, because eventually I am going to have to talk about long range and short range plans. And part of that is the series that we're going to be talking about. And so, yes, the good place. Yes. Contractual ethics with Scanlon, that is the basis for the good place. Yes, Stephen L. Carter, who wrote 2 seminal books that I have used as kind of background information in the back of my head, but that y'all are going to start reading because y'all need to learn it. They're called very simply. One is called Integrity, and the other one is called Civility. And you need to learn them. Last thing about Dale Earnhardt. It wasn't just Dale Earnhardt who suffered and died that day. His pit crew disbanded. His car was dismantled. His number was retired. And there was no clear, emergent top dog in NASCAR that year because of Dale Earnhardt's demise. That's important to remember. Because a lot of people think if you topple down something, then you get to be top dog. And I'm not top dog. I mean, I am one of the minor players in terms of numbers in the racial justice space. On all platforms, we have about 10,000 people. That pales in comparison to Necessary Allies, pales in comparison to Real Talk, pales in comparison to Ali Henny, pales in comparison to Titi Delgado, and I wish all of them well. I have written for or on behalf of all of them. We are never going to be at that numerical level. That's not what I tried for. What I try for is to make this a lab and a practice space. By the way, what do you think of the nails? This is for Melissa. Making this a practice space so that you can go to those other spaces and comport yourself well. And if I am saddest about anything, it's that I wonder how much of it landed and how much of you do that. This has never been a place where it's like you can only be at Lace on Race. No, the whole point of Lace on Race is to gird your loins and get the tools and the skills to be able to go out in other online spaces and in your offline lives. That's why we exist. We want you doing the work of racial justice outside. We want you to do it well, and you will not learn to do it while you're in the stands drinking a $15 beer and eating stale popcorn. You will not do that. You need to come down into the pit crew. So I want you to confront all of the asks. We really, really do need your support. And again, because we need to make sure that people know, because the endowment has been weaponized big time, and there are a lot of people who are mad about it. Again, one more time, louder for the back, or in this case, louder for the front, because I'm looking at my hallway. Okay. It was not meant for day-to-day operations. It is to allow us to think big. It is to allow us to do scholarships and fellowships. And we're actually even talking about a Lace on Race conference, either on Zoom or in real life in late 2021 or early 2022. It's for Lace on Race Lives, where I go city to city. It is to make sure that we can say a full-throated yes every single time someone asks me. Can you sit in on a webinar? We're going to be mentoring um, at least one person that was formerly incarcerated in part of the penal system here in California. I cannot tell you how excited I am to do that. We will be doing that work pro bono. It's probably going to take about 10 to 20 hours of my time, and I am here for it. I'm here for it. There's nothing that we do. There is nothing that we do that can't happen without you. It needs to happen to you. I'm hearing that the live is skipping. So I am going to stop this live. I'm going to say a few more things in the comments. And thank you, Vicki, for letting me know that it's skipping. I know that it's probably very frustrating. It's probably, I don't know what it is, my internet connection or whatever, but it's sometimes a little bit easier for me to do them not so live. But we've already talked about that. If you have not yet confronted the ask, please do. If you have not done the pin to post or the guidelines, please do, or please revisit them. If you are new to Lace on Race, they are absolutely foundational. If you have not yet registered for Bistro, do that. We are migrating, and there's a reason for it these last few months. And the takeout window, while we will never stop servicing the takeout window, it will no longer be our primary focus. If you want to be where the action is, you need to be at the Bistro. And lastly, for those of you who have not yet signed up to become part of Chef's Table, you need to sign up to become part of Chef's Table. There are more responsibilities and more expectations for both Bistro and even more for Chef's Table. But in order to be a pit crew, you need to remember to do that. Could you also put up, Claire, I see you. Could you also put up laceonrace.com/groups? That would be terrific. This is who we are. We're going to keep going round and round and round, even if we're the only person on the track, because this work is important. And we love you so very much. I love you so very much. Keep walking.